Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the messiest, most intricate facts, scoop them up, and hand you the synthesized knowledge you didn't know you needed.
And today, well, we have quite a story.
Yeah, we really do. It's a plot so rich and complex it almost defies easy categorization. I mean, it starts with arguments about wedding cake and gluten, and somehow ends up involving a Russian-made car bomb, a decades-old cryptocurrency scam, and this enormous fortune that, well, may or may not even be real.
It's a truly spectacular confluence of events. We're diving into a high-stakes mystery that weaves together, sophisticated cold storage security for crypto,
Right.
the very peculiar social dynamics of an English retirement community,
Yeah, that's key.
and a crime potentially involving hundreds of millions of pounds. We're looking at how this close circle of retired friends goes from planning a wedding to, well, hunting down a terrified best man who's convinced someone tried to kill him.
And our sources for this, they mix really sharp social observation with the kind of relentless tension you get from a thriller. It really demands that we synthesize these complex connections. You've got old-school criminal alliances bumping up against the sort of ultimate fragility of modern high-tech security.
Yeah, exactly.
So our mission here is to give you, the listener, a clear path through what is, let's be honest, a genuinely complex set of facts. We want to focus not just on the what happened, but the why behind this spectacular collapse.
So where do we start? Well, naturally, at a wedding.
Of course.
We begin with the backdrop of Joyce's daughter Joanna's wedding. Now, Joanna and Paul, her fiance, they initially wanted something small,
Yeah, intimate.
But it quickly snowballed, ended up with about 200 guests for the ceremony, and get this, 400 for the evening reception.
400, that's not small. And what really jumps out immediately is Joyce's perspective, right? You see this collision of the serious and the superficial. Joyce is fixated on the little things. She's worried her daughter is an older bride, whoever that means, and she's obsessing over how much the cake costs. Way too much, apparently. And she keeps mentioning Paul as a professor at Middlesex, which is fine, good even, but clearly not the millionaire or maybe flashy American she'd sort of pictured in her head.
And that preoccupation with the mundane, it creates this fantastic contrast for when the violence actually arrives.
Yeah.
It sets the perfect emotional stage.
It really does. Because within all this celebratory chaos, we get a snapshot of the emotional state of our main characters, the core group.
That's right. You've got Ron, who's in full celebration mode, maybe a bit loud, enjoying himself.
Classic Ron.
Then Ibrahim, usually so composed, the intellectual one. He's unexpectedly tearful during the ceremony, moved by it all.
But then there's Elizabeth. And the sources are really clear on this. Despite her outward stoicism, her whole mantra of self-reliance, she's still deep in the struggle of grieving for her late husband, Stephen. She keeps saying she's managing, she's strong, but privately, she admits losing him is, and I quote, still hard. She even describes her own heartbeat as feeling like a mechanical pump for the past year.
Just functional, no real feeling behind it.
Exactly, just a mechanism keeping her going, devoid of genuine emotion.
And that internal state is so crucial because it makes her, in a way, the perfect target for trouble. She's physically present at this wedding, but she's emotionally detached until the danger arrives, giving her a new focus.
Which brings us right to the inciting incident. This is where it gets really interesting. The action kicks off because of Paul's best man, Nick Silver.
Right. Nick, who apparently had just delivered a best man speech that was so awkward and rambling it made several people feel a bit queasy.
Oh, dear.
He then approaches Elizabeth out on the terrace.
And he doesn't waste time, does he?
No pleasantries at all.
Yeah.
He confirms who he is, Paul's best man, and then just comes right out with it.
Somebody tried to kill me this morning.
Wow. Just like that. An immediate demand for her attention. We find out later that Paul, his friend and Joanna's new husband, had shared some details about Elizabeth's, let's call it her former career, and her rather formidable reputation.
Ah, so that's why he sought her out specifically.
Exactly. He knew who he was talking to.
And his plea is fascinating. He tells Elizabeth he has definitive proof right there on his phone. But he has these deep, pressing reasons why he absolutely cannot go to the police. He can't involve the official authorities.
So he's essentially looking for a private solution, an off-the-books investigation, maybe even protection.
He's basically asking her to find someone who can help, appealing to her reputation for handling difficult situations. He needs a private contractor for what sounds terrifyingly like a professional hit attempt gone wrong.
And this right here, this is the moment of transformation for Elizabeth. That self-diagnosis about the mechanical pump heart, it just vanishes. She acknowledges the danger, absolutely, but she doesn't shy away. She embraces it. She feels what the source calls a familiar gravity, that pull of a serious high-stakes problem that needs her unique skills.
The danger doesn't repel her, it actually reawakens her.
Precisely. She accepts the mission. She recognizes that, as she puts it, trouble is much like love. When the time is ready, it will find you. And for her, the time was ready. The grief seems to recede, replaced by this sharp focus.
Okay, so Elizabeth is back in the game. But what exactly is this game she's just been pulled into? That takes us to this astonishing fortune and the very specific, unusual security structure built around it.
Yes. The core asset here is a single safe, and inside it, an almost unbelievable amount of cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. The value is estimated at somewhere north of £250 million.
$250 million, just sitting there.
Just sitting there. Well, not just sitting there. Secured by a company called The Compound, run by Nick Silver, the best man, and his business partner, Holly Lewis.
And the sources introduce a really critical technical idea here. Cold storage. Which sounds technical, but it's actually kind of old school.
It is, in a way. It's the opposite of modern online security. We're not talking about cloud storage or complex firewalls designed to stop digital hackers. Instead, it's all about physical security, brute force prevention.
So they physically secured the hard drives and the cryptographic secrets the codes needed to actually move this huge pile of Bitcoin.
Exactly. They took them completely offline, away from the internet, and locked them up in this heavily fortified underground safe room.
Huh.
Their basic idea was that it's actually easier to beat digital hacking by just removing the digital access points altogether, rather than trying to outsmart every potential hacker online. Make it physically too hard to reach.
That's a compelling paradox, isn't it? Using low-tech physical barriers to defeat high-tech threats.
It is. And the security for this immense fortune, it was layered. And crucially, it relied on dual human control. No single person could access it.
How did that work?
Okay, so the safe itself required not one, but two separate 6-digit codes. One code was held by Nick Silver.
The best man.
Right. And the other by his business partner, Holly Lewis. Neither of them could open the safe or access the money alone. That was the first layer, a safeguard against one partner going rogue.
Okay, 2 codes, but you said it was more than that.
Oh, yeah. Just getting into the vault room, the physical space where the safe was located, required multiple layers of biometric verification.
Biometrics, like in the spy movies.
Pretty much. We're talking retinal scans and thumbprints. And here's the critical part. These scans had to be provided by both the client who owned the asset and the operator from the compound. We later learned this operator was a guy named Bill Benson who used the alias Frank.
So you needed the client and the operator present, both doing retinal scans and thumbprints, just to get into the room.
Exactly. It was designed to be completely impossible to bypass without full mutual cooperation from everyone involved.
Wow, that's a fortress-level thinking.
It was intended as a fortress of layered authentication. Dual physical presence needed, dual biometric verification, and dual knowledge, those separate 6-digit codes. The moment Nick and Holly decided to actually cash out this Bitcoin fortune after holding it for years.
The potential reward for somehow breaching that fortress became absolutely astronomical.
Precisely, and that immediately put both Nick and Holly in extreme danger.
Well, naturally. When you're talking about a sum like £250 million, a bit of paranoia seems pretty justified.
Definitely. And Nick Silver certainly had his fears. He was convinced 3 specific people might want him dead. All of them people he and Holly had recently consulted about the tricky logistics of liquidating such a massive, unconventional asset.
Okay, who are the suspects on his list?
The sources lay them out clearly. First, there was Lord Towns, Robert Towns, a former banker apparently drowning in debt.
Aristocracy in trouble.
Quite. They consulted him for the traditional financial advice, how to handle the legitimate side of such a huge transfer. And we know his debts were crippling, pushing him towards desperate measures.
Okay, suspect 1. The desperate lord. Who else?
Second was Davy Noakes, better known by his nickname Ravy Davy.
Ravy Davy. Sounds colorful.
He was the complete opposite of Lord Towns, a celebrated former ecstasy pioneer.
Right.
He was consulted for the untraditional side of things, basically, how to discreetly manage liquidity, maybe move funds in less conventional ways, a very different skill set.
Okay, so the traditional banker and the untraditional drug pioneer. Who's the third suspect?
And this is the one Elizabeth, with her sort of detached professional mindset, immediately flagged as being overlooked by Nick himself. It was his own business partner, Holly Lewis.
His partner. Why?
Well, think about it. If Nick disappeared, who stood to gain? Holly would potentially have sole control, or at least she'd hold half of the necessary codes, making her position incredibly powerful if she could somehow get Nick's half. And Nick didn't suspect her.
Nick insisted she was safe, that she wasn't a threat, which ironically only increased Elizabeth's suspicion. Overlooked threats are often the most dangerous.
So to verify Nick's initial claim, this dramatic "someone tried to kill me" statement, Elizabeth reaches out to an old contact, right?
Yes, her longtime MI6 associate, Jasper. He's portrayed as this wonderfully eccentric character, a lonely guy surrounded by cat ornaments in his house, but still terrifyingly competent in his field.
And what does Jasper find out?
Jasper confirms the frightening reality. The device Nick saw under his car that morning, it was absolutely a real bomb.
Oh, wow.
And not just any bomb. It was Russian-made, suggesting professional sourcing. It was stable, meaning it wasn't some amateur job likely to go off accidentally. And in Jasper's precise, chilling words, it was big enough to kill.
Big enough to kill.
And perhaps the most disturbing detail. After Nick spotted it and presumably scared off the attacker, the bomb just vanished.
Gone. Which strongly suggests that whoever planted it was watching closely, realized the attempt had failed, and calmly retrieved their device. Very professional. Very dangerous.
Okay, so the threat is definitely real, the fortune is colossal, and the clock is ticking because Nick is now in hiding.
The investigation has to start immediately. Elizabeth and Joyce take the first step. They visit Nick's office at 8B Templar Street, and what they find is chaos.
The place is wrecked.
Completely wrecked. Papers thrown everywhere, furniture overturned. It looks like a frantic, violent search took place.
Now, in a normal case, you'd think, okay, simple burglary, someone looking for those codes Nick mentioned.
Right. But Elizabeth is sharper than that. She immediately considers three possibilities. One, it was just a robbery, someone tossing the place looking for clues to the money.
Okay.
Two, someone was following Nick, found him at the office, and either killed him right there or kidnapped him, wrecking the place in the struggle or the search afterwards.
Makes sense.
Or three, Nick himself staged the entire scene.
Staged it. Why would he do that?
Well, Elizabeth leans towards that third option, or at least thinks it's highly plausible. She notes the mess is almost too perfect. It looks exactly like what you'd expect a desperate, unsuccessful search for codes to look like.
So it could be designed to mislead investigators.
Exactly. Either to throw off professional rivals who might be hunting them, or maybe more likely, to make sure the police would just write it off as a low-priority burglary, a break and enter, rather than digging deeper and realizing it's connected to a much bigger, more complex international crime.
Nick desperately wants the official authorities kept out of this.
Okay, that's clever. So, with Nick missing and potentially having staged his own disappearance scene, the team decides to focus their attention on Holly Lewis, right? The partner.
Yes, precisely because Nick is missing. And Holly seems, well, conspicuously unconcerned about her own safety.
Really? You'd think she'd be terrified, wouldn't you? Elizabeth finds her lack of paranoia deeply suspicious. If Lord Towns or Ravy Davy had planted that bomb under Nick's car, logically, Holly should be looking over her shoulder, fearing she's next. Her calmness seems unnatural.
So how do they approach her?
In a classic move designed to draw out information under a guise of friendly concern, the team invites Holly to dinner at Cooper's Chase, the retirement community.
Dinner as an interrogation.
Essentially, yes. And during the meal, Holly is surprisingly open about the technical details. She confirms the staggering value of the Bitcoin fortune, acknowledges they consulted with both Lord of Towns and Davy Noakes. She seems confident, maybe even a little too confident about her own security.
It sounds like a high-stakes intelligence operation disguised as a casual meal among friends. Joyce is there. Ibrahim's observing.
Elizabeth is performing a constant psychological assessment. Everyone's playing a part. But the situation is about to escalate dramatically and tragically.
What happens?
The conversation ends, Holly leaves Cooper's Chase, and immediately afterwards, she's killed. Violently. In a car bombing right outside the community gates.
A car bombing? Just like the attempt on Mick.
Exactly. The sources describe the wreckage still glowing orange when Elizabeth and the others rush outside. It's brutal confirmation. The threat isn't just real, it's immediate, ruthless, and now it's literally on their doorstep at Cooper's Chase.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
And in that chaos, Ron does something crucial, doesn't he?
He does. This is where Ron's quick-witted pragmatism, probably honed over a lifetime of dealing with criminals and authorities, really shines before the police can fully cordon off and secure the scene.
Yeah.
Ron spots Holly's phone amidst the wreckage and strategically retrieves it.
He just takes it from a crime scene.
He does. It's morbid, definitely illegal, but it turns out to be an absolutely crucial piece of evidence. It's the key that might unlock the next phase of this whole tangled mess.
Wow. Okay, so now one of the code holders, Holly, is dead. That changes everything.
Dramatically. Elizabeth realizes they now have two urgent, simultaneous objectives. First, they absolutely must find the missing Nick Silver. He'd sent a text to Paul saying he was safe, but refused to actually call or reveal his location. They need him.
And the second objective?
Two remaining primary suspects, Davy Noakes and Lord Towns. One of them likely killed Holly and maybe tried to kill Nick.
And Joyce gets an assignment too, right?
Yes, Joyce is tasked with the delicate job of getting more information about Holly from Paul, her new son-in-law. Paul was Nick's best friend, and he knew Holly casually through Nick. He might have insights.
Okay, let's dive deeper into these suspects. Starting with the aristocratic side, Lord Towns. Elizabeth and Joyce go to visit him at his estate, Headcorn Hall.
And the description of the place is telling. The physical decay of the setting seems to mirror the decay of his finances. The stately home is described as sort of losing the battle with nature. There's dust, peeling wallpaper, the visible strain of just overwhelming debt.
His desperation is almost tangible then.
Palpable, yes. We confirm he inherited not just the land and title, but a crushing mountain of debt. It forced him to sell off chunks of the estate just to stay afloat.
And sources mention he got pretty desperate for cash, didn't he? Renting out the estate.
Extremely desperate. He resorted to selling filming rights to production companies. Anything to bring in money.
And there's that wonderfully specific, almost darkly funny detail about why he stopped.
Oh, yes. He apparently only put a stop to the filming rentals when he discovered that the latest production company, using his ancient family halls, was actually shooting, well, pornographic films there.
Oh my goodness. In Headcorn Hall.
Apparently so. The financial desperation had overcome even his aristocratic pride right up until that point. That tells you how bad things were.
Wow. And Elizabeth's investigation uncovers something else significant about him, doesn't it? His family motto.
Yes, a crucial cultural clue.
Yeah.
The town's family motto is aut nica, aut necer.
Which means?
It translates from Latin as kill or be killed. Quite. And Elizabeth sees this not just as some ancient motto, but as reflecting a lifetime of internalized pressure, maybe even violence, and certainly desperation. It makes him seem like a highly credible threat, someone capable of extreme actions.
And when Elizabeth confronts him directly about Nick and Holly's visit,
he lies. He flat out denies giving them any substantive advice, despite the £250 million stake involved. Elizabeth leaves the meeting convinced he's desperate, hiding something significant, and definitely involved somehow.
And his actions after their visit seem to confirm that desperation, don't they?
Absolutely. Clearly rattled by Holly's murder and maybe Elizabeth's questions, Towns does something very revealing. He drives to the compound, the actual secure vault.
To get money?
No. To retrieve his own personal insurance. It wasn't Bitcoin or cash. It was a small, old wooden box. And inside it, his father's old service revolver.
A gun.
Yes. He then takes this gun onto his boat, sails far offshore, and contemplates suicide. He's clearly preparing for the absolute worst-case scenario, securing the means to potentially follow that family motto, kill or be killed, to its deadly conclusion, perhaps directed inward this time.
Okay, so we have one suspect steeped in debt, governed by a lethal family code, and apparently contemplating drastic measures. Now let's switch gears completely to the other main suspect, Ravy Davy Noakes, the ecstasy pioneer.
Right. Ron and Bogdan, the gentle giant, are tasked with confronting Davy. They recognize he's likely armed and potentially dangerous, given his background.
How do they approach him?
Ron approaches it strategically. He suspects Davy might now possess Holly's half of the access codes, perhaps taken after her death, and might be desperately looking for Nick to get the other half.
So a potentially violent confrontation.
It gets tense. There's definitely a gun drawn at one point. But the confrontation yields the most unexpected, devastating, and frankly game-changing truth of the entire mystery.
Okay, what is it?
Davy denies killing Holly, but then he confesses the real secret. The secret about the Bitcoin fortune itself.
Wait, hold on. Let's unpack this carefully, because this feels like the absolute core twist of the whole thing. The $350 million fortune, The thing driving the murders, the fear, the investigation, it's built on a lie.
That is absolutely right. Davy reveals the whole story. About 10 years ago, he was involved in an amphetamine deal and got paid 20,000 pounds, but in Bitcoin.
Okay. Early days of Bitcoin.
Very early.
Yeah.
And Davy, being, savvy in his own way, immediately pulled a scam. He swapped the real valuable Bitcoin he received for a completely worthless, essentially duplicate or fake version he created.
You just swapped it.
Yep. He intended it as a relatively harmless bit of criminal double dealing at the time. Pocket the real stuff, give them digital dust.
But the problem was...
The problem was that this worthless digital token, this fake Bitcoin he gave them, over the next 10 years, its perceived value, tracked against the real Bitcoin market, ballooned astronomically to the $350 million figure everyone was now talking about.
Oh my God.
So Davy found himself trapped in his own decade-old long con. He was sitting on, or rather connected to, an asset that was financially worth absolutely nothing, but socially, in the eyes of Nick and Holly and everyone else, was perceived as being worth a king's ransom.
He couldn't tell them the truth.
He couldn't. His only chance to avoid catastrophic financial ruin, exposure, and probably extreme violence from whoever really owned the asset was to ensure Nick and Holly never actually tried to access the vault and cash out.
That explains why he kept advising them the timing wasn't right to sell.
Exactly. He was desperately trying to stall to keep the fantasy alive. The massive fortune they all believed existed was, in reality, as Davy puts it, completely worthless. He even notes his own legitimate money only amounts to about 31 million pounds a lot, but nowhere near enough to cover the $250 million they thought they had.
So, if the fortune was worthless, what was the motive for Holly's murder and the attempt on Nick? If Davy didn't do it.
Davy provides the second devastating truth, which clarifies the really complex and toxic dynamic that must have existed between the partners, Nick and Holly.
What does he say?
Davy confirms that Holly had actually met with him very recently, and she claimed to him that she had killed Nick Silver.
Holly claims she killed Nick.
Yes, and she was now trying to get Davy's help, or maybe his codes, to access the vault. This suggests Holly was operating entirely under the assumption that the money was real and that eliminating Nick was her path to controlling it.
So Davy wasn't trying to kill Nick?
Davy claims the opposite. He says he was actually trying to warn Nick about Holly, not kill him. He knew the money was worthless and saw Holly spiraling into dangerous territory.
Wow. Okay, so Holly was the aggressor, thinking the fortune was real. This leads us to the explanation for her death, doesn't it? Connecting back to that Russian bomb Jasper identified.
It does, and it's a dark, almost grimly comedic explanation. Davy suggests Holly essentially died by her own hand, hoisted by her own petard, as it were. Consumed by greed and paranoia, believing she'd killed Nick, or maybe just planning to, she had retrieved that stable Russian-made bomb, the same one Nick had seen under his car earlier. But instead of planting it under Nick's new car, she apparently put it on the passenger seat of her own car.
On the passenger seat? Why?
It seems it was a pressure-activated device. The idea might have been to leave it for Nick, maybe with a note set up so it would arm when he put something on the seat, or perhaps detonate when weight was removed as he got out.
Yep.
But she had it in her car first.
Okay. So how did it go off?
This is the incredible, almost unbelievable detail. The source heavily implies she accidentally triggered it herself. When she left the dinner at Cooper's Chase, she might have placed something heavy on the passenger seat alongside the bomb.
Like what?
Specifically, one of Joyce's notoriously dense, heavy brownies that Joyce had given her as she left the dinner.
A brownie.
Apparently. That brownie, possibly combined with a note she also placed there telling Nick to stay away, provided enough weight. Then, perhaps the movement of the car as she drove away, or shifting the items on the seat, triggered the pressure plate. Bang.
So, the woman scheming to murder her partner over a ghost fortune was accidentally killed by her own bomb, triggered by a piece of cake.
A very dense piece of cake, yes. Provided by the mother of the bride whose wedding started this whole chain of events. The irony is just staggering. That's the kind of intricate, darkly funny detail that makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, so while Elizabeth and Ibrahim are processing this bombshell revelation that the fortune is a phantom, there's a parallel crisis brewing, right?
Yeah.
Involving Ron.
Yes, running alongside the main murder plot is Ron's intense, deeply personal family crisis, and it really throws his long-held criminal and ethical principles into sharp relief.
His core principle being, we don't grass. We don't inform on people to the police.
Exactly. It's fundamental to his identity. And the source gives this principle some really powerful context. Ron's suffering from a severe hangover after the wedding, and the extreme pain triggers these vivid, visceral memories of a brutal attack he endured years ago.
It's not just a philosophical stance for him then.
Not at all. The memory is specific and traumatic. Being attacked by police officers during the 1974 miners' strike. He recalls being beaten with truncheons, dragged into a ditch, and the officers deliberately kicking him, aiming for his stomach and testicles. It was brutal, targeted violence from authority figures.
So that painful, deep-seated history explains his physical resilience, but also why he sticks so fiercely to that principle of never cooperating with the police, no matter what.
Precisely. But that principle is immediately put to the ultimate test by a devastating family emergency.
What happens?
Jason, Ron's son, and Kendrick, his grandson, turn up seeking refuge with Ron. Susie, Jason's wife and Kendrick's mother, has finally left her deeply abusive husband, Danny Lloyd.
Okay, that's good she left, but dangerous.
Very dangerous. Because Danny didn't just accept it. He immediately put out a hit on both Jason and Susie. Specifically, he arranged for a hitman, disguised as an Amazon delivery driver, to murder Jason the very next day.
Oh my God. That's immediate credible danger.
Absolutely. So Ron is suddenly facing the most intense moral dilemma imaginable. Does he stick to his lifelong identity-defining principle of never talking to the police? Or does he break that code, betray his own history to save his son and grandson from a violent criminal who is actively plotting their murder?
What a choice. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's side investigation, looking into Holly's phone that Ron retrieved, yields another vital piece of the puzzle, doesn't it? And it links back to Ron's crisis.
It does, quite unexpectedly. Remember, Holly was frantically trying to call a specific phone number right before the bomb went off? Elizabeth traces that number. It leads them to a man named Jamie Usher.
And who is Jamie Usher?
Donna, the police officer the group occasionally, reluctantly works with, digs into him. Turns out Jamie Usher is a known fraudster, a serial con artist.
Okay. How does that help?
Yeah. Here's the stroke of genius, or perhaps just bizarre coincidence. Jamie reveals to Donna that years ago, he took out 2 fraudulent mortgages using false names. And the 6-digit reference codes for those mortgages were the exact 6 digits Holly had been repeatedly trying to dial on her phone.
No way. That number she was calling was the code.
Elizabeth puts it together instantly. That must be Holly's missing 6-digit code for the safe. Holly, probably in a panic, unable to remember the random code she'd set years ago, had used a set of numbers personal to her. Maybe she'd helped Jamie with the fraud, or just knew the numbers as her secret access phrase.
And she was frantically calling him, hoping he'd answer and remind her, not realizing the number itself was the code.
Exactly. She was dialing her own password, essentially, realizing too late.
Incredible. So now Elizabeth technically have Holly's half of the code, even though the money is worthless.
Even though the money is worthless, the idea of the money still has power. And Ron realizes he can use this. He devises a brilliant, though incredibly risky, trap to save his family, leveraging the information about the worthless Bitcoin in Holly's code.
How does he do it? Who does he get help from?
He needs someone connected, someone who understands the underworld but might be willing to bend the rules. He enlists Connie Johnson.
Connie, the powerful criminal figure Ibrahim had previously criticized.
The very same. Connie had fallen out of favor with Ibrahim for encouraging her granddaughter Tia's disastrous armed robbery attempt earlier. But Connie is now desperate for redemption. She wants to prove her worth to the Cooper's Chase group to show she can do something genuinely good.
So Ron offers her a chance.
He presents her with the proposition. Help him set up Danny Lloyd, the abusive husband who ordered the hit. Connie agrees. She sees it as a way back into the group's good graces, and perhaps genuinely wants to stop Danny. She agrees to the temporary, pragmatic betrayal of criminal codes. She agrees to grass on Danny Lloyd to the police.
So Connie will tip off the cops.
Yeah.
How does Ron lure Danny out?
Ron uses the ultimate bait, the worthless Bitcoin information, specifically Holly's code written down, which Danny believes is the key to $350 million. He arranges a meeting. Danny, high on cocaine and full of rage, shows up, pulls a gun, and in his fury, admits everything.
He confesses.
He admits to hiring the hitman to kill Jason and Susie. He even offers to call off the hit, but only if Ron hands over the Bitcoin codes, or rather, the piece of paper representing Holly's code.
This is Ron's moment of decision, then.
It's his moment of intense sacrifice. He hands over the paper, the representation of the worthless fortune, and in doing so, he sacrifices his lifelong principle of non-cooperation with the authorities. But he does it to save his family.
And Connie's tip pays off.
Perfectly. Just as the exchange happens, Connie's alert brings Chris Hudson and armed police officers swooping in. Danny Lloyd is arrested, caught red-handed, confession and all.
Wow. So Ron saved his family.
He did, by making a calculated alliance with the very authority he despises. Afterwards, he's left reflecting on it. He concludes that while his core belief remains, you generally shouldn't talk to the police sometimes, for genuine justice, to save the people you love, breaking your own rigid rules is the only right path forward. The emotional weight of that decision for him is just immense.
Absolutely. Okay, so with Danny Lloyd arrested, the immediate threat to Ron's family is neutralized. We're now moving towards the final resolution of the main mystery, aren't we? Starting with finding missing best man, Nick Silver.
Yes, Nick Silver. Remember, he staged his office looking wrecked and then just vanished. Turns out he'd been hiding out in a grim, anonymous roadside travelodge for 8.5 weeks.
8.5 weeks, just hiding.
Completely isolated. He was sure his cryptic text message to Paul, "I'm safe," would somehow alert Elizabeth. But he stayed silent, just listening to local news, terrified he might hear that Elizabeth herself had been killed. He was deeply paranoid, cut off, and scared.
So how did they finally find him?
It's his old friend Paul, Joanna's new husband, who proves key. Paul thinks about their shared history, their unique connection. They used to have a tradition of listening to Pete Tong's Club Classic show on BBC Radio 1 together.
Ah, shared memory.
Exactly. So Paul uses this. He calls into the show and dedicates a specific song to Nick Silver. And then he adds this memorable, slightly theatrical tagline they probably shared. That's a pirate's name.
A pirate's name, that's specific.
It must have been an inside joke or reference. Nick, listening alone and miserable in his Travelodge room, hears the dedication, specifically the track The Key, The Secret by Urban Cookie Collective. He hears his name, hears the pirate's name tag, and immediately realizes he's been found by someone he can trust.
And he makes contact.
He contacts Paul, confirms he's alive and ready to come out of hiding.
So Nick's return confirms the final piece, right? What Davy Noakes revealed.
Yes. Nick's reappearance, combined with David's confession, confirms the devastating truth. The Bitcoin fortune he and Holly were risking everything for, the fortune that led to Holly's death and the attempt on his life, is completely and utterly worthless. A ghost fortune built on Davy's decade-old scam.
How does Paul take this news? He'd invested the business initially, hadn't he?
He had, but he takes the catastrophic financial loss surprisingly well. With a kind of wisdom that maybe surpasses his academic title, he simply says, "You can't let money be your master." He seems more relieved Nick is alive than upset about the non-existent money.
And Nick's return also leads to a moment of truth in Paul's new marriage.
It does, a moment of deep honesty. Joanna confesses to Paul that earlier she had intercepted a call from their solicitor, Jeremy Jenkins, about some envelopes potentially containing the Bitcoin codes. And she admits that in that moment, briefly, agonizingly, she had actually suspected Paul, her new husband, of being involved in the murders to get the money.
Wow. That's a heavy confession for a newlywed. How does Paul react?
He's relieved, not angry or hurt, but relieved by her honesty. He seems to recognize that that kind of truth and vulnerability, even when it's difficult, is far more valuable to their relationship than keeping secrets or pretending.
That's quite profound. So the main plot lines are resolving. What about the loose end of Lord Towns?
Ah, yes, Lord Towns, the man consumed by debt and that killer be killed motto. We last saw him heading out on his boat, having retrieved his father's gun from the wooden box he took from the compound's vault.
He was contemplating suicide.
He was. Far offshore, he reflects on all his failures, the financial ruin, the state of his family legacy, his personal shortcomings. He feels his luck has finally, irrevocably run out. He considers suicide as a way to avoid being a lifelong burden, maybe seeing it as the final act dictated by Otnikar. He raises the gun.
What happens?
We don't know. The source leaves his final decision deliberately ambiguous. It hangs there. We're forced to consider whether he followed his family's violent path, turning the kill inward, or if he found some other way to face the consequences of his life and actions. It's an unsettling, unresolved thread.
So ultimately, this whole chaotic, violent mess triggered by a $250 million ghost fortune, it isn't really resolved by the police, is it? Or by the high-tech security failing or succeeding?
Not at all. When you boil it down, it's resolved entirely by human factors, by connection, loyalty, truth-telling, even betrayal used for good. Elizabeth herself eventually concedes this. The entire complex investigation wasn't truly about codes or cryptocurrency or gunmen.
What was it about, in her view?
It was, she reflects, profoundly and simply about people, about their enduring struggles and messy lives. She says it was a story about a strong woman stuck with an abusive husband, talking about Susie and her desperate situation with Danny Lloyd. And she also says it was a story about one lonely man, Jasper, with too many cat ornaments, referring to her eccentric but vital MI6 contact. And poignantly, another lonely man, Lord Towns, in a cold house at the height of summer, consumed by his past and his failures.
So the grand international crime plot collapses into these small, recognizable human dramas.
Exactly. Loneliness, greed, the fight for connection, the weight of the past. The massive fortune was just a catalyst, a MacGuffin almost. The real substance of the story was all human.
That feels like the crucial takeaway here. The ultimate treasure discovered wasn't the Bitcoin, which didn't exist anyway.
No, the real value uncovered was loyalty. It was Ron sacrificing his deepest principle to save his family. It was Connie finding a path to redemption, ironically, by grassing to ensure justice was done. It was Paul and Nick's friendship surviving deception and murder.
And the story doesn't end with a bang, does it? Not with a vault being cracked or a final confrontation.
No, it ends with something much quieter, almost domestic, but profoundly meaningful. It ends with Joyce. Having survived her daughter's chaotic wedding and the subsequent murder investigation, she travels up to Pearly.
To see who?
To visit Jasper, the lonely MI6 expert with all the cat ornaments. And she's not going empty-handed. She's bringing him a gift, a new teapot, and, very importantly, some milk.
A teapot and milk.
Yes. This simple domestic act of kindness, this small investment in a lonely friend, it stands as the final counterpoint to all the massive, cynical chaos generated by the ghost fortune. It's about human connection trumping financial obsession.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? You look at the value systems presented here, this obsessive hunt for huge, secret fortunes versus the simple act of human generosity, of showing up for someone.
Which form of investment actually holds more lasting value in the end? The secret digital safe holding absolutely nothing? Or the simple act of bringing tea and milk to a lonely colleague?
It's a powerful thought to end on, something for all of us to mull over.
Indeed. Until the next deep dive.